What impact does an appeal have on the decision to discipline? We talked a little bit about how the regulations require and mandatory appeals. You're also allowed as a school entity to decide to allow an appeal for any other basis. So mandatory, if it's a mandatory appeal, I would suggest to you that discipline or the decision as to discipline responsibility is stayed pending the outcome of the appeal. And this appeal is after the decision maker, and I would envision for a school district would be to the Board of School Directors. So the mandatory basis for appeal is certainly a procedural irregularity, new evidence not reasonably available that affects the outcome, a conflict of interest, or bias. And again, there has to be that implication of materiality, that what this individual is appealing about, whether it's the procedural irregularity, the new evidence, or conflict of interest or bias, it has to actually implicate or affect the outcome. It can't be, you missed in your policy, you missed this by one day. Does that materially affect the outcome of the decision maker decision as to responsibility? And I would suggest to you most often no. And then in that, it doesn't meet the mandatory discipline timelines. Now, could an individual argue to federal court or the Office for Civil Rights that you failed to follow the policy as written and you missed a deadline? Possibly. Yes, we've seen that in that other occasion, but hopefully if we've missed a deadline by a day, or we needed to delay, or we needed extra time, we know now that we need to document that and we need to provide notice to both parties. The supportive measures that you offer to either the complainant or the respondent can continue during the appeal process. If your district has made a decision to allow appeals for any other basis than the mandatory, it would be a decision then at the district level what impact it has on discipline. Are you going to stay it as you would with mandatory, or are you going to place the individual on suspension, expulsion, allow them to appeal? What's the impact of that? If there is an appeal and the decision's overridden, the argument from the individual is that you somehow owe them education for that time missed, where they were out of school, off work, under the argument be an improper ruling, an improper decision as to responsibility. So I think that you need to talk to your individual solicitors, but the best case scenario under an appeal is certainly to stay the discipline until the appeal is heard and decided.